Bench Opinions. Three idiots with amateur analysis.
Right, welcome to another episode of Bench Opinions, everyone. Another week, another episode. I'm joined by Dominic, Klaus, and I'm Max. Klaus, it looks like you're wearing the same socks.
I am wearing the same
from
socks.
last week.
We had such good luck with our video performance there last week that I thought it had to be due down to the socks.
Did they go through the wash cycle once, or is this just...
Of course they did. I was even told that I washed them too hot and that they are losing a bit of color.
Who told you that? The socks, or they're like, excuse me?
No, my girlfriend said I don't know what I'm doing.
All right. I guess straight into the action with an apology to anyone who places any bets based on our predictions. I think that
do we have to apologize? Because we keep on saying don't do what we say.
Yeah, but I think people have faith in us.
Yeah, I think
they shouldn't. They really
Full of
shouldn't.
George Michael faith.
if you don't pay attention in the first 4 seconds of the video where we call ourselves idiots, and then don't listen to the warnings, it could happen because we are quite convincing.
If, on the other hand, you bet against our picks, you will be a wealthy person, which is something we spoke about just before we came on air. And if you want to share the wealth with us, please feel free. Maybe we should set up a Patreon.
We can.
Let's start with a subscribe and a like. Patreon we can talk about down the line.
Okay. My thinking is let's start with the Australia-New Zealand game because that's the game that kicked off first. Australia played New Zealand in Perth. They lost 14-28. New Zealand putting a marker down. Winning with a bonus point, meaning South Africa had to answer.
Dominic and I went to a pub together to watch the game, and we have never been such proud Australian supporters. And even with us joining the Aussie force, it was not manageable for them to get the win there, unfortunately. I thought a lot of calls that were a bit interesting in terms of yellow card, should it be, shouldn't it be, high tackles and stuff like that. And I think I can imagine Dominic wants to talk about that in terms of those calls in comparison to the South Africa game and how those were adjudicated. But it just seemed that Australia wasn't able to bring the physicality and sort of got pushed over by New Zealand a bit.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of parallels between the two games. I think it was by far and away probably the worst rugby we've seen over the weekend of a rugby championship this year. Very cagey. I think it's also just it's just par for the course if you're looking at sort of the business end of a competition. I think New Zealand knew exactly what they needed to do, and so did South Africa. And it was like me at school, just do the bare minimum, get it done, even if it's ugly, get it done. And I think that's kind of
what
what
the line was, and you knew once you crossed it, there was there's nothing you gain from overperforming.
Yeah, who needs straight A's for what?
But I mean, on the other hand, I mean, you know, we all three of us sat here and said Australia are going to beat New Zealand in Perth, and New Zealand came out and proved, I think, a lot of people wrong and said, listen, we had a bad loss against South Africa, but we're still a powerhouse. I mean, they're ranked number 2 in the world, and I guess we always say that between the top 4 nations, there's very little to split it, but they definitely fronted up to the challenge and said, no, we're definitely the second best team in this competition.
I think what's positive for New Zealand is also Razor made a few more changes and kind of dip deeper into the pool of players. At least that was very much the narrative coming out of New Zealand when the team was announced, saying, oh, okay, Razor's finally sort of gone a step further outside of the known realm for him. And it paid off. I think also they managed, I mean, the ebbs and flows of the games were quite strange because Australia kept on performing at their best when they were down to 14, which was very bizarre. I felt like they had the best phases of the game then. And I don't know if that's down to New Zealand maybe sort of saying, okay, well, you know, they can't really hurt us, or let's absorb pressure now because they're 14 men attacking and then, you know, come at them later. But whatever they did worked, and like very, very cagey. Not many tries. I think New Zealand only got 1 try and the rest was all just penalties, if I remember correctly.
I don't think that's correct. We had what was the Geordie Barrett header there for the assist?
Yeah.
That was 1.
Oh, there was 2. Sorry, there was 2.
And then the other one was a pick and drive
well, then
in
there
the
must have been
beginning.
3. So there you go.
I thought you guys watched the game.
Where did
and
they
it was
read
like at 11 o'clock in the morning. You can't even.
No, I had a few beers,
drunk.
but yeah. No, but why did I think? Or was it Australia that only got 1?
Could be.
No, but then they had 14 points. Anyway, I butchered this.
I mean, they could have scored a try and 3 penalties.
Unfortunately, not the send-off for James Slipper and O'Connor, I believe, but unsure there, that the Australians would have wanted. But I think what we're going to do later in the episode is we're going to give all the teams a grade based on their Rugby Championship performance, and then maybe we can talk on where Australia are and what's next for them. South Africa, or no, let's say it correctly, Argentina versus South Africa, at home for Argentina in London at the Allianz Stadium.
Twickenham.
Argentina narrowly losing 27-29. It was tighter than I thought.
It was like a World Cup final there for us again. We don't like to win by too much of a margin, it seems. But I think where we seem to really struggle is we applied the same tactics that we've been applying since doing really well against New Zealand and Wellington, which is kick high and try and chase it down. And it didn't seem to be clicking as well. There were swirling winds. There's that storm coming through, Storm Amy. And so you saw the guys were really struggling under the high ball. And that's where the Argentinians seem to be doing better. They seem to be able to catch our kicks, win them, like convincingly pass it on, get around us. And so we weren't able to apply pressure through our kicking game. And so they were able to stay in the game. I guess at the end, they kind of caught up unexpectedly. That was a little bit shocking, and I think we can go deep into the bench and how they performed, especially the bench after what we had spoken about last week about, old guys maybe needing some time to move on, or not needing time, but needing to move on, and the younger guys maybe bring more energy. Now we had the older guys with experience coming off the bench, and they weren't able to maintain the margin that we had. The younger guys seem to have sort of built that margin, then the older guys lost it. So maybe something to talk about as well.
Yeah, I still think.
Just remember, before you criticize anyone, that these people have families.
Yeah, apparently.
Okay.
Jesus,
Dominic.
Go look at the comments on the previous video. Apparently, I've butchered people, and anyway. I think first of all, let's talk about Argentina. I think Argentina need to apply the sort of this get under the skin, break up the game approach to games a little bit more. I think they're quite a proud nation, so they do look to sort of play that slick rugby a lot of the time, and I think they would be well advised to also look at maybe Steve Borthwick's England, maybe towards the end of last year particularly, or what he was trying to build at a stage where he was heavily criticized for it. But I believe probably the makeup of the Argentinian team per se might be better at executing that, and that's really disrupting your opponent and then looking to take advantage of them, as opposed to kind of try and play this champagne rugby that the Argentinians, I guess, particularly with their backline players, are used to. I was quite impressed by that, and I think also Carreras is so good. I mean, funny enough, he very uncharacteristically missed a relatively easy kick, which maybe is one of the blemishes, but other than that, like, he just, with the cross kick try, and like every time he gets the ball, something happens, and their basics in that backline are also really good. So it's this combination of just really, really taking advantage of any breaks in play, and when they do have the ball. And I think with the nature of their forwards and also the level of their forwards, I think they could get away with being a little bit more disruptive, maybe putting this sort of champagne slick, we all in awe of how they pass the ball aside, and try and actually just beat teams like that, because they got pretty damn close in beating us.
Unfortunately, over the last 2 weekends, their best player has been Cheslin Colby. he did the drop kick for Chuck Morris's try last week, and this week he tried to throw some weird Hail Mary pass across the field, which then got intercepted by I do not know whom, and it was 14, a runaway try. Del Guy? Was it Del Guy? I think it might have been Del Guy, 14, the winger. So Cheslin's probably going to have to look at those last 2 weeks and go.
It's an interesting one, because I was watching with someone who said there's a few chances that the Springboks are trying to take that maybe aren't worth taking. Like there's a few like desperate sort of passes, attempts at finding another player that just look like it's for the sake of it and not necessarily good decision making.
But I think it's part of the process, I guess, of also like. Sure. You have to kind of enable these guys to do this kind of thing, and I think if you're going to throttle someone, particularly someone like Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu, I think it's going to be very counterproductive, and I think he has to learn himself in the acts of possibly here and there throwing an intercept pass or making a bit more crucial mistakes to kind of understand, okay, these are the boundaries, and this is where and when I can choose to try and exploit them.
Yeah, I guess two storylines about the game is one. Argentina had nothing to lose coming into this game, and they really came out and punched the Springboks in the mouth. It was very much a sort of, no, we're here. They sort of, every time the Springboks came back, they came back again. But on the other hand, another storyline could be South Africa took that hit, responded well enough. I know the scoreline looks like it was super close. But the try that they scored at the end made it that close. And I mean, Argentina are definitely worthy, worth their 27 points. But the Springboks did enough, I think, in that game.
I think the Springboks, what kept them in the game was their scrum.
Yeah.
And that's what kept them, well, not kept them in the game, but that's what really dominated the game last week as well, was their scrum.
I don't know if we need to do a special shout out to Coach Dan for that one scrum, that Argentinian ball that that whole scrum of Argentina folded like garden furniture.
Yeah, hit against the head with one less man in the scrum as well.
Yeah. I don't think that ball even touched an Argentinian player besides the
Good
scrum
Lord.
half who put it in. But those are the type of things that keep us in the game when we're conceding as much as we're conceding. It also helps that when we're conceding due to knock-ons and forward passes and stuff like that, due to the wind, that we then have that to fall back on, right? So it's almost like even a penalty against us is actually an advantage to us because the scrum is currently so strong, which is awesome. We just need to hope that World Rugby doesn't take more and more power away from the scrum and that it eventually becomes irrelevant for us, and that's a big weapon that we then lose. But South Africa conceded way too many penalties. And it wasn't just knock-ons, it was all sorts of different things. So that would definitely be something to look at, and I think that's what kept Argentina in the game. And they actually did quite well in capitalizing on that,
I think with discipline, it's particularly been worrying, and I said it I think after the last game as well. It's been worrying in the sense that it's been a sort of bit of a thread throughout the Rugby Championships, but just also stupid penalties. I mean, even Jan-Hendrik Wessels, I watched the highlights back a couple of hours ago, and also just one of the sort of towards the business end of the game, Jan-Hendrik Wessels completely mistiming a tackle to hit the Argentinian scrum off late, stuff like that, where it's just completely brain dead. But let's speak about discipline. I think Kane and Moody should have been sent off, personally.
I was going to ask where we stand on that. I saw Nigel Owens. He's learned a lot since then. He sent out a tweet where he explained the rules. When it's a knock on, when it's a knockdown, and when you get a yellow card, and then you just let people debate in the comments. I don't think there was a clear try scoring opportunity, and that would have been the yellow card. And that would have been the second yellow. That was my opinion of it. I thought it was fine being penalty.
The only reason I say it is because I believe I've seen lesser yellows given. I mean, I think back to sort of Willie Leroux at Murrayfield when we were in the stadium as well, where he actually made a proper, genuine attempt to catch the ball. And that was adjudicated to be a knockdown. So that's the only reason why my knee-jerk decision is, judging by what I've seen in the past, my knee-jerk decision is that Kanan's lucky to stay on the pitch. Albeit the first yellow card as well is unfortunate more than anything else. I don't think, and that's the whole thing around the new head contact rules in the tackle like that, is just a lot of the time players with no real intention of doing any harm are getting sin-binned, and that's why they have the review. I get that, and that's why it makes it. I think it's a great system that they go into review and they have a little look longer at it, because I think it's an injustice. Than you're Sam Cane, of course, then you deserve to get a red card. But in Kanan's case, it was just a mistake.
Two people that we spoke a lot about coming into this game. Just want to hear what you guys thought about them in a match that was a little bit more tightly contested. Sasha and Damian Willemse. What did you guys make of their individual performances? Like I said, in a game that they maybe didn't have as much freedom as they did in the week before.
I think for Sasha, it's difficult to comment on his game without reflecting on last week's game. So you need to look at it as an isolated case, because otherwise you're going to go, he didn't play a good game, which is obviously bollocks. Like, he still played a solid game. I think with him, the struggle is more trying to figure out the balance between going on your own and trying to do like some crazy things that he is capable of, but doesn't necessarily need to be doing them all the time, and when to get the team involved. And I felt like this game, there were things that maybe weren't necessarily on where he was still trying to go solo and try and create like that little bit of magic. But all in all, I'd say he had a solid game. Damian Willemse, I'll pass on to you.
I mean, the only real negative sort of moment I find is maybe he was found wanting for one of the overhead kick try by Argentina. I thought he was just caught a little bit out, but it was pinpoint by Carrera. So it's difficult to point fingers there. And I think a crossfield kick often puts the best players out of position, because that's the reason they use it as a weapon, right? I don't think he was
He had a few I thought he had a few moments where he did create space again through his stepping and his movement.
Agreed. Yeah, I think with both of them, I think it's easy to forget how wet behind the ears they are. Even Willemse,
Willems has got 2 World Cups.
he does. But if you look at the amount of minutes he's played, I wouldn't say matches, but minutes, and how much of that time he spent being a starter, I think it's easy to forget that he still really needs to pick it up. And that habit, I think it also, you talk about habits in sport, right? The habit of starting week in, week out, getting used to that. And the same thing for Sasha. And I think Sasha also has to learn and accept that he's not going to shoot the lights out every week. And how do you contribute constructively, even though you're not shooting the lights out every week?
This was something, I can't remember which of the pundits said it. Either it was someone on Box Unpacked or it was...
The Skulkberger.
Was it Skulk who said that he also needs to learn that he's not going to have stellar performances every week, and that's good, And I think he should keep trying, being the electric fly half he is in those games, because that's what you need him for. If you need someone who's a bit more conservative, then you could bring on someone like Andre. Anyone else in that Springboks performance you guys want to highlight?
So man of the match went to Kobus Reiner, who I think actually deserved man of the match was Malcolm Marx.
You just can't give a Stormers player his flowers, eh?
No. Malcolm Marx, I thought what he did in terms of game-changing moments was more impressive, and then on top of that, he had a very solid performance. His jackling is unreal. People just can't move him off the ball. He's so quick to get in there.
Yeah.
His work behind the maul is unreal. I mean, he's the South Africa's number 1 try scorer as a forward, with 27 tries, I think it is now.
He's just equaled Percy, and I think he's about to catch Brayton Pauser. So that's quite
as a forward,
that's
right?
Quite
so it's very, very impressive.
Anybody tried his beer?
Bomb Squad.
Yeah. And?
Yeah, it's all right.
So he's not as good there as he is on the field.
I mean, it's
tastes like beer.
Tastes like beer, smells like beer. It's probably a beer.
Okay.
Yeah, that would have been my standout player of the match. Yeah.
I mean, I don't disagree with you, but I Kobus has to get. I mean,
Thank you.
We spoke at length about.
He's only been a Stormers player for like 2 weeks.
He hasn't played
yet. So calm down.
But I mean, we spoke about it when we reacted to the lineup and speaking about sort of Grant Williams and Kobus and what is Kobus's role, and I think he showed it perfectly on the weekend in being a fiery leader type scrum half, but also someone that kind of just makes sure that the guys stay in the game and stay in the moment. I felt like he balanced that perfectly, and I do think for his role on Saturday he was definitely the better fit to sort of get us across the line. Albeit Grant eventually came on and played his part, but I think he did exactly what I think we saw in him. And it will be interesting to see if he can stay fit, because he's dynamic enough. Even if he loses a couple of yards of place between now and the World Cup in 2027, I think he's still got.
How old is he?
He's 30. He's old. 34.
Yeah.
30,
really?
Something like that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not sure.
So So that's why I say it's definitely. In most cases, it would probably be touch and go if he makes that World Cup squad. But you can argue now that he's probably having one of his best periods and starting at 9. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes.
Yeah. Final log. South Africa finished on 19 points. New Zealand finished on 19 points as well, with a goal difference that was about 39 points less. Australia on 11 points, finished in 3rd, and Argentina finished on 10 points. Let's go into Rugby Championship grades. We'll go team by team, and we'll start with the Springboks. Klaus.
If you look at the whole tournament, I feel like you need to give South Africa a B+. Because the reason I say that is because when they shone, they were fucking brilliant, and it was very, very impressive. The big problem for me is consistency. With the team, if you look at that first Australia game, that was shocking. Like how the fall from grace after 22 minutes to the rest of the game. Then to fight back in the second game and win it. Then Eden Park, we were all over the place, just inconsistencies, dropping the ball left, right, and center. And then even against Argentina, the first game, amazing. Obviously, we had that great scoreline. But then the second game again was just
is there something to be said maybe about that? The Rugby Championship in its current format is very interesting because each team plays each other twice in the frame of a week. The first game is like a one-off World Cup game.
Yeah.
Second game is something where you learn about the opposition. Argentina had some time to adapt more to South Africa's play. We had time to adapt to New Zealand after the first loss.
So then you'd say it's more difficult to win the first game and easier to win the second game.
I think it depends on who you're playing and how you match up to that opposition and where you're playing. If you're playing at Eden Park, you don't have a chance of winning because the ref's never on your side.
But that's how I feel about the Springbok team.
Okay.
Is that I thought when they played, they were absolutely
like my
amazing.
teachers in school.
You could give them an
Fucking
A+ for the good moments, but just because of the inconsistencies, I have a higher expectation.
Okay,
for
fair
them.
enough. Dom?
I think there's two facets to grading the Springboks and actually grading any team in this Rugby Championship. 2 years, almost exactly 2 years out from a World Cup, is I would agree with your assessment of the Springboks. If you look at the Rugby Championship, we've won. You look at the points, look at the overall performances. I'd say a B+, probably right. If you look, and this might be a hot take, if you look at the whole process from the first game of the Rugby Championship, in the changes of personnel, in how the squad has progressed, in who's dropped out, who's dropped in, the character shown to kind of bounce back from that Wallabies win, in context of being 2 years out from a World Cup and seeing the turnover in players and seeing sort of a progression and of the DNA and the ideas and everything, I don't know if Rassie could have wished for this Rugby Championship to go on any better. And I for that reason, in that context, I would honestly give it an A+. And I think it's because of, if you just look at that first team and the way they folded in that first game against the Wallabies and overcoming that and going on to win the Rugby Championships with those performances in Wellington, with those new players kind of stepping up, I don't, it's, for me, very little to criticize.
Yeah.
So you're saying most improved?
So we'll get to that. Where does your A+ and B+ land you on average for the Springboks? Divided by 2.
A.
Okay.
Straight A.
2/3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I think I'll land somewhere between you two. I'll give them an A-. I land very much on the argument that you made. I guess, like I said, right in the middle of you two. I do think that there's inconsistencies, but I think what you mentioned there about the process and the players that have come through and where we are now, I think we're definitely at a better point than we were before the Rugby Championship. New Zealand. I'll start with you, Dom.
Listen, I have to.
Are you giving them a D+?
No. I have to genuinely eat my hat, and because I didn't see Razor turning it around, and I think it's because I got distracted by the noise in New Zealand and noise that I'd never heard before. So for me, that was kind of, as a pundit, you have to sort of look at everything and go,
We can call ourselves that now, eh?
Well, I mean, I've called myself that, even though I fucking don't even know how many tries were scored by New Zealand or Australia. But that's
I think
besides.
that's actually what most pundits are
Yeah,
like.
exactly. But except I haven't had a whole career of rugby and been hit in the head a lot to just be like, sorry, Anyway, but yeah, I think they're going to carry a lot of heart from the fact that a catastrophic Rugby Championship saw them finish level on points with the Springboks, who ended up winning. And I think for that reason, I would say an A-. I would give them.
That's surprising to me.
Yeah, and I think
You are
I'm
generous, eh?
impossible to predict.
You
You will sit here a week and say New Zealand are on the verge.
Well, then I'm wrong.
Of breaking apart their whole rugby. Like rugby might never be played there again. And then a week later, you'll give them a fucking A-.
But he says they haven't even hit rock bottom yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I still stick by that. But I admit I'm wrong, and I think the fact that Razor was brave enough to go out and pick a whole nother team, and you had some guys come in and youngsters sort of put their hands up. I think it's insane that the amount of noise and the amount of negativity that came out of New Zealand, and you look at that log, is wild. And for that reason, I think I'll give them an A-.
Okay. Klaus.
I'm leaning more towards a B-. I think there are some big problems structurally at the All Blacks union franchise team, whatever you'd like to call it, squad. And I think that these wins have come off the back of a bit of pressure.
Yeah.
Razor potentially losing his job, the players obviously not wanting to embarrass themselves and whatnot, and they've been having to dig really deep to put these performances together. I don't think they don't look convincing on the field, and they don't look like they just don't look like they're comfortable really.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm not even sure if the performance in this Rugby Championship is a good thing for them, because I'm like genuinely I'm a
paints over some
little bit
cracks?
worried that they painted over some cracks. Exactly.
Don't worry about them, bro. What are you
No,
worried about?
bro, you know, as I said once,
Do you think
on the
they worry
podcast,
about us?
everybody needs a strong New Zealand in rugby. No, but honestly, I think there are some pretty deep problems there,
Yeah.
and they definitely need to sort those out. And we've talking about, you know, eligibility. We've spoken about, you know, the isolation that they have just geographically. It's to no fault of their own, of course. And I think looking to the 2027 World Cup, I don't see it getting much better
Yeah.
than currently. And I think all the other teams are in processes of finding a new DNA, new strategies, new what. And I think by the time 2027 rolls around, I think the progress with other teams is going to be a lot further than where the All Blacks are.
Fair enough. I think I'm with you more than I am with you on this one. I also have them down as a B-. I think it's extremely hypocritical to give them an A. But no, I think, yeah, I just thought that, I think they thought that they'd be a lot further along under Razor than they are, and I'm very much on the plane of there's worries there at 9-10 for them that they can't easily solve the way they're going. Right, I'm going to kick us off with Australia. I'm giving them a B for their performance. I think my expectations were bigger of them after the Lions series. And even with that, I didn't think that they'd beat the Springboks in South Africa, which I thought was amazing. I did think they'd maybe, after coming off that, maybe front up against Argentina more. But New Zealand clearly are still a step too far. But the reason I don't give them a C+, why I give them a B or a B-, is on the whole context of where we thought they were maybe 6 months ago. They've really come a long way, and their rugby is in a healthy state. They've got young players coming through, and I think if we say that the Springboks development has come a long way through the Rugby Championship, I thought Australia's has too, but they are at a vital crossroads now of like not becoming the team of almost, you know. They do need to compete in the near future again, because I did think this year the All Blacks were ripe for the picking. And to go down 14-28 in Perth is a little bit lackluster. Actually, I don't know if what I'm saying and my grade are completely...
It's very confusing. Mixed messaging going on
I
here.
am giving Australia a B-.
Okay.
I was going to give them a C+ there for a second.
I had
but
no
can't.
clue where you were going to
Okay,
go.
okay. Let me pass it to one of you
I thought
guys.
you might have given them an A- there at the end of your speech. But I think I am pleasantly surprised about how well they actually performed. I think the game in Perth was a little bit tricky because of weather conditions as well. The game was delayed due to a massive storm that they had. And I think that New Zealand was able to just sort of play those conditions a little bit better than Australians were. But I think when you look at their progress throughout the Lions tour, but then also throughout the championship, I think they played extremely well against very, very tough opponents. I mean, we've all said it, and everybody else has also said it. It was the most competitive rugby championship that we've ever seen. And to come out third and not like literally by a game, I think is testament to how far they have come. Their problem is squad depth.
Yeah.
A lot of their players obviously playing overseas and then partially having to go back again, coming back to Australia. All of that sort of back and forth was a little bit disruptive. And then when they had injuries, they just didn't really have the same ilk of cover for those guys. So if they can poach a couple more guys from rugby league, like your Swahili's, and did Ikitau also come from rugby league?
I don't know. He's fucking good.
But he's also amazing. And if they can hang on to guys like James O'Connor, Nick White, and stuff like that. I think whether that be in a playing role or in a coaching role, I think Nick White, you saw him in the box as well. So I think those boys are still heavily involved.
There's wisdom to pass on,
and I think that's going to motivate the guys, and so it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the November autumn test series.
So what was your grade?
B+.
B+. All right.
I lean to a bit more towards Max, and I think I'm going to push that home by my mark. I think if you'd asked me before the two New Zealand games, I would have probably given them A.
Yeah.
You look at, I think one of the concerns with Australian rugby was a lack of momentum for a long time. I think they weren't really beating enough teams to kind of get the interest up in the country behind Union. They gained a lot of momentum through the very impressive performances in the British and Irish Lions. They backed that up with even more momentum, beating South Africa at Ellis Park. Albeit losing the second test match, but then going to then playing Argentina and beating them once, and a close shave in the second test. And I think momentum continued to build, but I think the wind was knocked out of their sails a bit by back-to-back losses to the All Blacks. And I agree with what you said. I think the All Blacks were there for the taking. And then if you look at it, because I did this with the Springboks, I'm going to do it with them as well. If you look at it in the greater context of where they are, Joe Schmidt is scheduled to leave his role in mid-2026, right? And I think everything should be geared towards having as much momentum as humanly fucking possible by the time he leaves. And I think that momentum has been lost a little bit, and now this makes these November test matches so crucial. I don't know what their fixture list is. I mean, almost every game is tough. I know there's a couple of sort of neutral games happening, way more neutral games than before, actually, what we're used to in the autumn series now, in build up to the next World Cup. But it's crucial, and I think they really lost an opportunity, and because of that, I think I'll give them a C, to be honest.
Okay. Wow. Dropped down from an A to a C.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a fucking tough teacher, this guy.
This guy's all over the place.
Momentum, bro. Momentum.
Argentina, bottom of the log, but in the most competitive rugby championship, as we've said. What are we giving them, Klaus?
Straight B. I thought the gameplay was really interesting, free flowing, very entertaining to watch, and they showed up against the biggest teams. So, getting beat New Zealand, beat Australia, and then got really close to beating us. And let's be honest, essentially a home game for us.
They got hard done by, eh? Yes.
No, but it was their choice.
Yeah,
it was their choice.
No, and also don't put it into London. Don't put it in London because.
Yeah.
Look, they wanted to capitalize on financial benefits of
Yeah.
it, and so one can understand it from that aspect of it. But
Because I think had that game been in Argentina,
Rossi came out and said he's like, thank goodness it wasn't
Yeah,
on Argentina,
because
because that could have gone
that's
very
a
differently.
shit show. Yeah.
Look, I think they're hamstrung, Argentina, honestly, out of all the teams in this rugby championship by their domestic situation and similarly to New Zealand in the sense that they're geographically just not within a zone that allows them to play competitive franchise rugby. And considering that, it's unbelievable that they keep showing up. Of course, they ship out their talents, and their talents are spread across all the big leagues in Europe particularly. And of course, they reap the benefits from that. I think Contepomi is also the right kind of figure there. I think the guys bleed for him. I think Cheika had them playing really good rugby, but I do feel like there was a disconnect at the time between him and what it meant to be Argentinian, because I think you see it in football and across all their sports. There's this sort of intrinsic passion to play for Argentina that maybe is just it gives them an edge a lot of the time, I would argue. So that's again makes it sadder that they weren't able to give themselves that edge playing in Argentina. But apparently they made 5 times the ticket income that they would have made if
70,000 people at Twickenham. It wasn't completely sold out.
No, but apparently they say 5 times the ticket takes that they would have compared to if they'd had a sold out game back in Argentina.
Sad state.
Of course. But at the same time, where is the lifeline? And I think that context for me bumps them up probably a whole I'm in a similar place, sort of B+. I think if you look at the cross, if they look back at this whole period, they're probably not very happy with themselves. I mean, they got whacked by an England B side off the back of a pretty good British and Irish Lions performance. In context, maybe not as impressive as we thought at the time, just because of where the British and Irish Lions were. But yeah, I mean, if they can beat anyone on their day, and that's what everyone says about them. But it's just, you just don't know if that's enough.
Yeah. I'm going to pick up on your last point. they can beat anyone on their day, but it seems like they can also lose to anybody on any
100%.
day.
I agree. Yeah.
And that's why I'm going to give them a C+, because I feel like out of all the 4 teams in the Rugby Championship, they were the ones, it turns out, with the most stable. They were furthest along in their development, seemingly, because the Springboks redevelop in cycles. I don't know if Argentina necessarily do as well. They've sort of had the chance to establish themselves and their game plan, and it seems like I think they need to look at themselves long and hard about losing to Australia, who were coming up. I know we're hailing Australia and how they've come back, but Argentina need to look at a game like that and win at the away fixture.
It brings me back to the comment I made of them finding a way to maybe win a few more games ugly. I think the game they lost in Australia to Australia, I think if they boxed a bit of cleverer there, they could have easily.
I know
gotten
they were quite critical of the ref in that game, and it was
of course.
tight.
I mean, of course. But if I remember correctly, they were relatively far ahead in that game, and Australia came back. So you do look at that and you go, well, maybe there's just needs to be some kind of switch. And it's great to stay true to. They've always played the way they play, and I think even France, who I would say had a lot of similarities, maybe not in the last 5 years, but in the last. Like 10 years ago, France were the Argentina back then. They could beat anyone on their day, but they could lose to anyone on their day. And even the French have kind of learned, or at least developed into a side that know how to get games across the line, or at least more than before. So
unfortunately, like you can be the team who runs everyone close and only loses by a small margin, but you're still losing. And they're bottom of the Rugby Championship log, and I think that if you take it as a sober fact is not good enough for them.
Just out of interest sake, what was the points difference between the 4 teams?
So South Africa has a positive point difference of 57. New Zealand has 8. Australia has -13, and Argentina has -52.
Just conceding way too many points.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the big knock was that South Africa game, right?
Like South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia conceded roughly the same amount of points. Obviously, South Africa scored way more than anyone. Yeah, like you said, Australia New Zealand, Australia, and Argentina scored the same amount of points, but Argentina just shipped too many. And bonus points did matter in this Rugby Championship, as we saw as South Africans.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that wraps up Rugby Championship.
Yeah, the last thing I just want to say is it's nice to see South Africa go back to back.
Yes.
For the first time ever in this competition, as the Rugby Championship especially. It just goes to show that Rassie is very focused on building a legacy in between World Cups and not just that World Cup cycle. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was there is a game in Japan, and then there is the game in Paris, which we will be going to.
Yeah.
And if Sia plays in Japan, he will be playing his 100th Test cap in Paris when we're there.
Oh, wow.
Which is going to be pretty fucking awesome.
We should hand him a Bench Opinions congratulatory plaque.
Yeah. I'm going to get like a laminated photo of him. I think that's a good idea. But if he doesn't play in Japan, because I would assume that there will probably be quite a lot of changes to that team, then we have maybe 2 bites at the cherry.
When we go to Italy.
Yeah. You should go to Italy as well.
Yeah.
You didn't want to come. You wanted to go to Turkey.
Yeah.
For the big rugby game, Romania versus Bulgaria.
On third hair transplant. Okay. Successful Rugby Championship 2025. Let's move on to the URC. Week 2.
Chaos.
Two games postponed due to weather. Edinburgh versus Ulster.
Fucking
and
Amy.
Connacht versus Scarlets. Storm Amy rearing its ugly head there. On the Friday, the Sharks showed why they are the Sharks. I think last week we said if they lose to the Dragons, then it's mind-boggling. But they didn't. Fair enough. They drew 17-17.
Yeah.
I don't even know what to comment on that. It's gotten to a point now where it's just so ridiculous.
Are you about to drop them as your second favorite team in South Africa?
No, I'm going to say... What do you mean second favorite team?
You always say that the Lions are your favorite, and then the Sharks are like your...
Look, I support the underdogs, obviously.
Well, these are your boys.
These are the new underdogs, right? No, but as Dominic said about the New Zealanders, I don't think they've seen rock bottom yet. Like it seems like they're going down.
The problem is they've now got that fucking whole arsenal of Springboks coming back, and it's probably not going to make them any fucking better.
No, that's
the thing. I don't know if
the scary thing.
Is there another sporting team globally, regardless if it's rugby or anything else, that has this comparison of a team that has so much money but is so terrible?
United. Manchester United.
There you go.
Essentially. Yeah. I don't know. I just, look, I think surely you have to question him anyway before, but you have to question the coaching. Because surely... Yeah?
They've got families.
Oh, yeah, they do have families. Sorry.
You can't question anyone.
Mr. Plumtree. You're not good. And I think that tells.
You were good once, but now maybe it's time to hang up the hat.
Exactly, yeah. I'm interested to see how long they still put up with him, because surely, I mean, there's cutthroat American investment behind this team.
Yeah.
I don't think it's not play anymore.
Yeah.
And I think if they keep, I mean, look, at the end of the day, they still made the semifinals last year, but I think they're gonna want to see some sort of dominance.
Maybe they're really focusing on European competition this year.
Maybe.
I'll believe it when I see it.
But now also, the thing is, it's not stopping either. I saw Thomas du Toit's now been linked with them, so he's also going to go to the Sharks from next year.
Yeah.
So it's crazy.
Look, at the end of the day, if you're a team who picks Ruan Dreyer to play in your squad, then that's what's going to happen. Because that guy, I don't care.
You've got a
I
vendetta
don't care
against him.
about him. Like I'm not talking about him personally, but as a rugby player, he really needs to retire.
Unfortunately, also the terrible form of both Hendrickse brothers continues. That's a fall from grace of note as well.
The Chuchushko brothers were the only shining light in that team.
They're my favorites. Let's go on to Saturday. A surprise victory for Benetton against Glasgow. I said Glasgow would steamroll Benetton, but
Reno Smith with a drop goal, 40 meters out to win the game. Very impressive.
16-14 for Benetton.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah. I honestly also picked Glasgow to win it. I thought
two wins for the Italian sides.
Yeah, very good. The Bulls beat Leinster 39-31. 2 wins for the Bulls, 2 losses to start the season for Leinster. Yeah. Is this a crisis in the whole of Ireland?
Is this? Well, yes.
Is Irish rugby at rock bottom?
Yeah. Well, which other team is competing there? Ulster gets rained out. Connacht gets rained out.
Yeah, they're all gone.
Yeah. So you only got Leinster left, and they can't even beat anybody.
Nah, but we spoke about it. I think it's. Yeah. I still don't. I think they would have. Look, they were more competitive against the Bulls. Yeah. I think the Bulls are also still trying to figure themselves out under a new coach. I think they probably would have chalked themselves down for maybe one win out of the 2 first games. That shutout by the Stormers wouldn't have been to the plan. Yeah. But the Bulls at the same time, after seeing what the Stormers did to Leinster, would have been thinking they have to get. I mean, it's you have to get those points.
So apparently, there's only a certain amount of games players at Leinster are allowed to play a year.
Okay.
And taking that into account, especially with the fact that they actually do compete in the European competitions and take that more serious than the URC, I guess sometimes, means that maybe it makes sense for them just to say, listen, throw a team out there. If they win, they win, because they're going to get into the semis. They're going to probably get into the final. So I don't think there's any panic buttons.
From their strategy from last year? Because last year it seemed like they were pretty gung-ho about winning everything.
Yeah, but they still sent a very weak side to South Africa. Yeah. They just won with the weak sides in South Africa.
And I think the difference was when with the way the fixtures worked out, they were able to. I think what hurt them the most is they're sending their weakest side coming right out of off season. I think that's a concern.
The Bulls are going to be an interesting team to watch, as Dominic likes to point out, because they've got some big players coming back from the Springboks eventually.
I mean, they've got Andre Pollard joining them, which is...
Andre Pollard, Kanan Moody, isn't Vocalo also on the front row there?
No, he's left.
No, he's gone to the Stormers.
Jesus Christ, everybody's left. I can't even remember who's on the team then. Willie Leroux played well.
Yeah.
Serpentine's there as well.
Serpentine.
One Irish team who did win was Munster. They beat Cardiff narrowly, 23-20. Very good game. But
good win for Munster as well. I mean, Cardiff are no slouches.
No.
And I would assume that Munster have similar sort of personnel issues in how many games they're allowed to play, their players.
Yeah.
So interesting to keep
I
an eye on.
I suspect not a lot of them are playing for the Irish team
as
as
many,
much.
yeah, for sure.
So there might not be as many limitations there, but definitely a good win to get. And lastly, I think heartbreak for you guys on the Sunday. Zebra narrowly beating the Lions 22-20, but in Italy. So
Yeah, but it was right at the death of the game, and they managed to then score against us to take it.
I have to admit that I was watching the score, and when I saw the Lions score, when I saw the Lions up by what did they ended up losing by 2 points, right?
Yeah.
When I saw them up by 5, I was like, "Oy, this is not good."
Too close.
And then the next time I looked, I was like, yes, too close. They deserve to fucking lose every time they play in that kit. I mean, I'm a Lions fan, but that thing is fucking terrible. It looks like a back to school commercial.
I do wonder who sort of designs this and goes, "That's sick."
yeah,
I think when you have the resources that the Lions have, I think they fucking draw names out of a hat who gets to
I think they
design
literally
the kit for the year.
I think you can buy the right to do that at the Lions. I think you don't even have to pay that much. I think you can
just
pay
get a
like,
box.
You give like 5,000 rand, and they just let like a school child, like it's one of those things where people draw like, you know, they used to do it at our school for that school bazaar.
Oh yeah, for the yearbook.
Yeah, for like who gets to design this year's theme. So maybe that's what happens in like grade 4. You get to do
It must be, because you could go to Mr. Price and you could get a better looking shirt than what they've got.
yeah.
Monsieur Prizé, bro. It's a fucking good shop, that.
All right, let me run you through the log as it stands currently. The Bulls on top with 10 points. Behind them are the Stormers, Munster, and Zebre on 9.
Hectic.
And then Cardiff, Glasgow, Ulster, and Connacht round out the top 8. At the bottom, Scarlets are still on 0. Leinster are just above them on 1. And your Lions are also on 1 point. And everyone else is sort of floating in the middle there. The Sharks are on 2 points. So I think early doors, it's a little bit like there's a few dark horses out there.
I think lots of movement still to come in that.
Yeah, but I mean, Italian rugby can be one to watch.
Yeah. Stormers could also drop from that spot quite easily.
I will end this podcast right now.
The one thing I will say, though, for any of the teams that have started well, you know, you're going to get some of your Springboks, your national players back for a bit,
Yeah,
and then they're going to very quickly be gone again.
yeah.
So for the Stormers to have chalked, 2 wins as well as the Bulls without their Springboks, I think that says a lot, and they'll be able to build on that momentum. It's insane how much rugby they're playing, though.
Yeah. I think some of the Stormers do. Some of the Springboks do have to rest after. But I know the Stormers players of the Springboks are staying in the UK and are playing I think 2 games that we have overseas now, and then taking their rest after that. I don't know if the rest of the South African
You
teams,
have to think that Japan test match is going to be like predominantly a second string side.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the amount of rugby these guys are playing, you
and the
have
travel.
you have to think that like you might just see sort of like something that seems like a South Africa A, close to it.
Your
at least.
teams, your guys that we ran out against, like Georgia, in the July Test
Maybe
series.
Chuka finally gets a run
hope
at
so,
it.
yeah.
And Jean-Luc
And
Dupree.
good old Kewen.
Yeah, I'd love Kuhn Horn to get a shot, and just for Springboks fans just to look at that more as like an exhibition game.
Special mention to, and we spoke about it while we were watching the Springbok, or one of the rugby games we were watching. Special mention to Similani at fullback for the Stormers there.
Yeah.
Playing, don't think he's ever played there. I think from what we heard, so he's played the first 2 games at fullback.
Yeah.
Man of the match performance in this last game.
Yeah.
Interesting to see how that develops, because I'm heavily calling out for some more cover at fullback, because I worry about Fassi's long-term sort of injury woes, and Fassi struggling means that Willemse plays, in my opinion, far too much rugby at 15. So I want him at 12. So if we can find a couple of guys that are knocking on the door, I don't know if it's maybe too late in Similani's career to really be able to play at 15 at sort of Springbok level, but it's definitely been promising.
It's a pity with him because he was always he seems like he's one of the like stalwarts and like young guns who just, I think because of unfortunate circumstances and other players just being slightly better of him, never really took that final step. And I was actually quite sure he's going to leave the Stormers this year. So it's good to see him stay. I hope he does continue to get chances. And I think fullback is probably the most likely, because the centre pairings of Du Plessis and Nel are quite set for the Stormers.
And then you have Damien Willemse, who also plays
Damien
inside centre.
is supposed to come back playing
Sasha
inside.
Santos plays inside
Galant
of
is
Mani.
also there as a fullback if he comes back.
Right. Anything else URC related or other rugby stuff to chat about?
No.
All right. Well, then that wraps it up for this week. Thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate all the comments under our YouTube videos and under our TikToks, whether they be positive or negative. We don't really care that much. We obviously love them more if we're positive. Thanks for that. And
maybe some folks can give some ratings on the Springboks or on the 4 teams in the Rugby Championship, so we can see how close we were.
Yeah, give us your grades
views.
on how you think the teams did, and maybe we can compare them on how we thought they finished. All right.
Nice.
Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.